So firstly, I realise I've got a very limited amount of time. So KISS is the only thing I can tell you really, really shortly. We're basically the engines for the Environment Agency here in the UK, and we also do lots of work with kind of weather data and flood data. So we create a number of tools such as like Hydromaster, which basically get local authorities and utilities to react to flooding events and move assets around. So that's basically where we started in this space. And myself, I was a weatherman way back when. So yeah, so it'll be a bit weathery today. I apologize for that. That's what we're going to get. So right, this is basically looking at the new smart tank technology that we've invented. I know every man and his dog now says they've got smart tank technology, so hopefully I'll try and show you some of the differences here. But basically what we're going to try and do here, and what this means is SuDS, and some of you may know that, some of you may not, but effectively ways to stop water immediately going into sewers or reservoirs or onto nearby roads and things, basically holding up the water a bit. So, because at the moment, especially environments like this in London, the water hits concrete and immediately gets filtered into anywhere really, and that can hold a whole host of problems. So this is a real project. It happened. It exists. So this is a roof on Manchester. And what the first thing we did is brought someone in who could understand what the weights of this roof were, and that was actually EPG in this case. And this is quite important. So on that roof, we first off worked out the weights and how much water that we needed to drain from it legally anyway. And then what we thought about doing is, and this is where it kind of really gets smart, and I'll get onto the next slide now, but just so you can see, this is what it was and this is what it now looks like. So it's green meadows, there's one a few roads, and go on, give me one more click. Okay, so the tank effectively is a permavoid layer which sits on basically on a rubber mat. It has soil above it, a soil substrate, and then the grass above that, and then a digital version of that tank is made on the KISS cloud. And what that does is it has basically the size and shape of the tank, how much, and any kind of commands it has. So basically, do I need to keep water in this tank? Do I need to release it? And it will also check, say, the latest weather data. So it first off says, okay, there's a load of rain coming in, potentially. Now, we all know weather data. It may or may not turn up, especially if it's in a showery condition. So the model also takes into account if that water is going to turn up and the percentage of it. So at 50%, maybe we drain down a little bit of water because we're not sure what's happening. So that's physically what the tank would look like. So those are the different layers, and the permavoid here is obviously made by Polypipe, and this is the really kind of important bit. So that's the waterproof lining. The water sits on the roof inside here and slowly wicks up via these channels into the grass above, effectively, or to the roof above. And this is a very, very thin layer. So this roof really can't hold much weight. So it's really critical that everything kind of worked as it should. So this is August 2022. So as I said, right, we've got incoming rain, it's showers, it's a hot month. So what the hell are we looking at here inside this tank? So this is kicked out on one of the KISS systems. So this is the push out from that digital twin, and now we're seeing what the answers or the results for this month. So this is where it really starts getting exciting. So as I said, we've got rules set inside that tank to make sure it's kind of optimized. So we're always actually trying to keep the tank roughly at around 50% full, and that's in case a random shower turns up. But it's also in case of this situation here. So what's happened here? It's a long, dry summer. You can all remember it last year. Hot, super hot one, not much rainfall. And so here comes a nice big event, 13 millimeters, maybe a bit more, but about 16 millimeters. The tank drains down potentially a little bit of water just before, so we can absorb all of that rainfall. So the first thing is we've absorbed a shower of around 16 millimeters. So that helps. And none of that water went onto our sewers or our network or rivers. It's all just absorbed in the tank. And then the next thing we can see is basically it was then dry and hot. So through the kind of weeks or the weeks going, the water inside that tank kept that roof alive. And so you didn't need to hose it down in the middle of a hose pipe ban. You didn't need to provide it any more water. So against a long kind of dry period, this roof stayed green, where all other roofs were like dying out at this point, or all your SuDS kind of in the kind of pavements and things like that, all dying out. So first thing is that, and we can also see there's a little green bar here, so we can control the valve and how much we want to open up that valve. So in this case, we saw a bit more rain came in. So we opened up the valve to keep it to around 50% again. This is something that we might change actually in the future. We might want to keep more water, because then we might want to keep, so we can keep the tank alive, or we can be more drought resilient effectively. Again, more rainfall turns up.
Very clever.
Yeah, it's done a good job. So yeah, so there's more rainfall in it again, tops it back up, and again it dry and it slowly wicks up to the layer above. So this is basically resilience against heavy showers and also against the drought all in one hit here. And then let's move on to September, because now we're going to see much more rain turning up. Now we also see, this is not our rain gauge, by the way, this is a nice nearby EA rain gauge, but you also see it will just fail because and I'll show you another graph in the morning, it definitely confirms, but we'll get the nice front bit anyway. So here we can see another maybe 16 millimeters coming in, and we're topping up the tank from nothing to about 50%. And again, we open up the valves to try and keep it either 50% full, or in this case here, before the rain turns up, we also open up the valves to make space for incoming rain. So if it's at 50% and we think it's going to go to 100, we don't want to reach 100, so we'll drain it down a little bit before that rain turns up. And again, we just make sure that we never really go over the topping over feature. So why does this matter? Again, we want it at 50% to keep the roof dry, but we also don't want to, we want to basically mitigate the impact of any heavy rain, or if we release it, we can release it before an event or after an event, which basically flattens down that surcharging peak. Now, it can happen, of course. Now, here we go. Rain gauge is back on again, because there's some red bars missing here. So again, the blue level is the live level inside the tank. Sorry if that wasn't clear. The blue level is the live level inside the tank, and the green level is when we've opened up the valve. That is a command to the valve. If it's at 100, then we've opened up the valve full bore, so we're draining 5 liters per second. Now here we see at the end, we actually have a kind of maybe a 1 in 30 year event here, maybe slightly over that. So we're seeing maybe 30 millimeters come within in about 24 hours, and that raises our tank up to 100%. Now, let's discuss what happens there. So basically, in 100%, it just acts like a normal tank if it's the tank's full, so it just uses the overflows. But it still absorbed a good quantity of that rainfall before it reached the sewers or the rivers, and in fact, there's only a smaller patch where it's actually draining out. So we absorbed most of the, say, a 1 in 30 year event, and the tank in this case was already at 50% full. So the idea in the future is, if we know it's now a wet month, if we're now in October, potentially we don't need it at 50% anymore. We might just need it at 30% and give us a little bit more room to absorb some of these heavier rainfall events. That's what we can do, and that's how we kind of work with this smart tank. Yeah, and then the last thing is, once we've, why does this all matter? Why do these tanks matter? Like, this is where it kind of gets really interesting. So certainly in the Netherlands, they use this way more of this technology, of course, because they've got a better need, or a better need. They've got a more urgent need to control the water, given the rise in sea levels and things, and the more rainfall events that are happening. So in the Netherlands, they've got lots of these assets, which means they can actually redistribute and move the water around. And here you can see they've actually got valves, pumps, and weirs, and they're redistributing the water. And when you have lots of these assets, this optimization, which we also use to do this, or this digital twin, links it in with other ones. So we can control lots of assets all at once through the same technology. So it's built to have lots of tanks like connected in together. And then say, why does it matter for, say, a water utility? Well, a water utility, if it's, say, running, if the sewer levels are very dry in the summer, they can actually ask some of these tanks to potentially provide some of the water to the sewer to maybe create a low flow. But also, we also may want to reuse this water or redistribute it to reservoirs and things like that, depending on the cleaning maintenance. But we can do lots with it. But effectively, it should provide some mitigation to droughts and floods.